All right, y'all, let's get right into it. Today, I want to talk about the New York Giants safety unit, but more importantly, I want to talk about Jevon Holland coming into the New York Giants organization to really fill some big shoes and really prove a point for Joe Schoen, if you ask me. But let's talk about how we got here. In 2022, that was undeniably the best work that we have seen from Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll from a results perspective. You had 9 wins, a playoff berth, a playoff victory in Minnesota, and a Coach of the Year award for Brian Daboll. And the Giants appeared to be in really good hands. I'm talking like all-state hands, but there was a major asterisk on the 2022 season that is not necessarily just how easy the schedule was set up, but more importantly, a lot of that damage was done with the majority of Dave Gettleman's roster, the previous general manager. In the offseason after 2022's success, Joe Schoen decided to play a little bit of hardball with the safety position, and he allowed Julian Love to walk in free agency, and Love ended up ultimately signing a 3-year, $33 million deal with the Seattle Seahawks. A year later, it was Xavier McKinney who walked in free agency and signed a 4-year, $67 million deal with the Green Bay Packers. Xavier McKinney then went on to have his best year as a pro, and it really didn't look good for Joe Schoen. The Giants also drafted safety Tyler Nubin in the second round to fill that hole left by Xavier McKinney, and by the end of the year, I think that Joe Schoen realized he may have made a drastic mistake in not prioritizing the safety position. So this past offseason, as we enter into 2025, Joe Schoen went out and he signed safety Jevon Holland to a 3-year, $45 million deal, which is $15.1 million per year, just under $2 million less per year than what the Packers ended up giving Xavier McKinney. Now, I really like Jevon Holland, and I think he's a more than capable safety, and he has great instincts, and he also has that ability to be a force in the box and help stopping the run, which is a department that the New York Giants really struggled in, not only last year, but over the last couple of years. But at that price, Jevon Holland has to be a standout player for the New York Giants in 2025. Joe Schoen has now had 31 total draft picks since becoming the New York Giants general manager. 8 of those draft picks were spent on defensive backs. That's just under 25%, and that is arguably a unit that is still a work in progress for the New York Giants, especially when you look at it from a depth standpoint. I like the boxes that we have checked as far as the starters go in the secondary, but if any one of those guys go down in the starting unit, we're going to be definitely in for some trouble for the New York Giants in the 2025 season. A few weeks ago, I came across this article on ESPN.com where an anonymous NFL personnel director says that New York Giants safety Jevon Holland drastically regressed in 2024. So here's what the anonymous executive had to say. He said, "I still love the skill set, but he drastically regressed last year, which was shocking to see from a young player in a contract year." And that's hard to disagree with. Now, this isn't just any old anonymous statement. This is a statement that comes from an NFL executive during the survey that is conducted by ESPN to determine their top 10 rankings entering the 2025 NFL season. They didn't only do this at the safety position, they did this at all positions across the board. And ironically, there are 2 former Giants that are on this top 10 list, Xavier McKinney obviously being one of them. And to my surprise, Julian Love is on that top 10 list as well. Jevon Holland was an honorable mention, but here's the ESPN list of the top 10 safeties in the NFL so you can see it for yourself. But let's give this a little bit of context here and give some context to the situation, or depending on how you want to view it, maybe some excuses for Jevon Holland, and talk about why his play may have decreased a little bit. Now, I recently was watching the Pivot podcast, which featured Jevon Holland going into the 2024 season, and he spoke on defensive coordinator Vic Fangio not wanting to truly be there with the Miami Dolphins in 2023. In 2024, the Dolphins and Vic Fangio mutually parted ways, and Vic Fangio went on, just like Saquon Barkley, to go win a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. Anthony Weaver ended up taking over as the Dolphins defensive coordinator, and he became Jevon Holland's 3rd defensive coordinator in just 4 seasons. Shane Bowen will be Jevon Holland's 4th defensive coordinator in the past 5 years. So you can absolutely blame at least some of the continuity and familiarity to an extent as a reason why Jevon Holland has regressed. But there's no way around it. Jevon Holland definitely did regress in 2024, and these are the numbers that back it up. A career low in tackles, a career low in fumble recoveries, a career low in pass breakups, a career low in interceptions, a career worst PFF tackling grade at 48.5, a career worst PFF coverage grade at 57.1, and Jevon Holland allowed a career high passer rating of 111.3. Jevon Holland's PFF grade went from 90.4 in 2023 all the way down to 63 in 2024. Now, with that said, I'm going to make up some excuses, or I'm going to give you a little bit of context. But I think it would be unfair to proceed without speaking on Jevon Holland's injuries. Holland dealt with the concussion injury in 2023, and then he sprained both his MCLs in the Week 11 matchup versus the New York Jets. He was having one of his best games of the year. He even had a pick six that he took 100 yards to the house before the half. And then in the second half, Jevon Holland became yet another victim of the MetLife turf. Holland really has not been the same since that injury. And although he was off to a fantastic start in 2023 on an elite pace with 25 tackles, 8 run stops, and 2 pass breakups in the first 3 games, from that point on, things kind of fell apart. So you could blame the injuries a bit, but even before the injuries, Jevon Holland started to kind of fall off just a little bit. Now, the expectation coming back in 2024 was that Jevon Holland could return to his true form, but his numbers just continue to decline. Jevon Holland's missed tackle percentage went from 7.8% in 2023 to a career-high 17.1% in 2024. Now, I've watched a lot of his tape, and there are absolutely some good plays on his 2024 tape, and you could see the reason why Joe Schoen would want to bring in a player of Jevon Holland's caliber. But he definitely lacked consistency, and that's something that New York Giants fans are just all too familiar with, is players who lack consistency. Now, I enjoy looking at the tape, but when the New York Giants go out and they acquire a new player, I also like to check the temperature with, the former fan base to see what are the fans from the former player's team saying and how do they feel about this player leaving their organization, like I did with Brian Burns when he left the Carolina Panthers just last year. Here's what one Dolphins fan had to say a few months ago on Reddit. He said Jevon Holland was great, but this past year he really fell off. I mean, he went from arguably a top 5 to 7 safety to the mid-20s. I think you'll see a lot of Dolphins fans agree with this take because it was so obvious this last season. The vast majority of fans I've read on here wouldn't keep him unless the price was dirt cheap. That is just one fan's perspective, though, so we do got to take that with a grain of salt. But all in all, Jevon Holland, you can't take away the damage that he has done. He was a top safety in his first 2 seasons in the league, and it has been a bit of a roller coaster ride ever since. The biggest concern, and I think that is what the personnel director here, the anonymous personnel director, is talking about, is that Jevon Holland didn't show up in a contract year in 2024. When you look at Brian Burns, it was the opposite. In Brian Burns' contract year with the Carolina Panthers, he had his best season. But Jevon Holland is still extremely young at just the age of 25 years old. And I think that if Jevon Holland can stay healthy, Shane Bowen will be able to utilize him all over the New York Giants secondary. Even in 2024, in a down year for Jevon Holland, he was utilized all over the field. He had 235 snaps in the box, 434 snaps at free safety, and 142 snaps in the slot. So when we need a guy like Andrew Phillips to maybe take a little bit of a rest, I think Jevon Holland is a guy that can step up and also play a little bit of slot corner as well. Joe Schoen is banking on Jevon Holland returning to his true form, and this is a gamble that I can support, like wholeheartedly. I love this signing because when we allowed Xavier McKinney to walk in free agency, I thought that was a mistake. And I think that Joe Schoen is learning from those mistakes. If you've been paying attention to the streams I've been doing on Bleacher Report, that literally has been the theme of this offseason, is that Joe Schoen, a young general manager, is finding ways to learn from his mistakes and try to correct those mistakes. So again, this is a gamble that I wholeheartedly support. But if Jevon Holland can't return to his elite level of play, it's not going to be Jevon Holland that's going to be getting the blame. It will absolutely be Joe Schoen.